Are targeted killings war crimes or IHL breaches? Imagine a situation where a soldier or a government claims they are acting to protect their country. But how do we know if their actions are lawful or crossing the line? That's where the difference between war crimes and breaches of international humanitarian law comes into play. Targeted killings are a hot topic because they involve killing specific individuals, often outside traditional battle zones. The key question is whether these killings are lawful acts during armed conflicts, or if they break the rules that protect civilians and combatants alike. International humanitarian law, which includes the Geneva Conventions and the laws of armed conflict, sets the rules for how parties should behave during war. These rules focus on protecting civilians and making sure military actions are fair. When it comes to targeted killings, the law says they are only legal if they follow certain principles. The first is distinction, which means fighters must tell apart civilians from soldiers. Only those actively fighting or directly taking part in hostilities can be targeted. Civilians who are not involved should never be attacked. Next is proportionality. Even if a target is lawful, the attack must not cause excessive harm to civilians or damage. The military advantage gained should outweigh the potential civilian harm. Then there is necessity. The use of lethal force must be necessary to achieve a legitimate military goal. If there are less harmful options, those should be used instead. Lastly, the status of the person targeted matters. Lawful combatants can be targeted during war, but civilians or those not directly involved lose protection unless they are participating in hostilities. In practice, targeted killings during an armed conflict can be lawful if they follow these rules. But outside a conflict zone, or if civilians are killed or harmed disproportionately, these actions may violate international humanitarian law. Violations like killing civilians who are not involved or using excessive force are breaches. When these breaches are serious and intentional, they can be classified as war crimes, which mean individuals can be held responsible in court. The difference between war crimes and breaches is important. War crimes are serious violations that often lead to criminal charges against individuals. Breaches might be smaller or less severe violations of the rules. So, if a targeted killing happens unlawfully, say, targeting civilians or using too much force, it can be considered a war crime. But if it's done within the rules of armed conflict, it's not necessarily a war crime. In counterterrorism efforts, states often justify targeted killings as acts of war against terrorists or unlawful combatants. But whether these killings are lawful depends on if they follow the rules of international humanitarian law. If they do, they are legal. If not, they are breaches or even war crimes. The context matters a lot. If the killing is outside an armed conflict or targets civilians, it's more likely to be unlawful. To sum up, targeted killings are not automatically war crimes or breaches. They depend on how they are carried out. If they follow the principles of distinction, proportionality, and necessity, and target lawful combatants or those directly involved in hostilities, they are lawful. But if they violate those principles, especially by harming civilians or using excessive force, they become breaches of international humanitarian law and may be classified as war crimes. The key is always the context and whether the actions respect the rules meant to protect everyone during conflict.